Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we're really going beyond, I guess you could say, the single word that always seems to get attached to Bhagat Singh, martyr.
Right.
And we've got a lot to work with here. Articles, excerpts from Wikipedia, even some of his writings.
Hmm.
It all paints a picture of someone a lot more, well, complex than he's sometimes remembered, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So our mission today is to really understand his journey, his revolutionary journey, and why he still has this power to move people, to inspire them, all these years later.
It's really fascinating how even now, almost a century later, his legacy is still something people debate.
Yeah.
He inspires people, but he also makes people uncomfortable, especially certain political groups who want to, like, claim him as their own.
Yeah.
He just doesn't fit neatly into any one dox.
He resists those easy labels. Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
What was his family like? Was there something, I don't know, was there something about how he grew up that planted the seeds for revolution?
Well, for his family, activism wasn't just like a pastime or something. It was practically in their blood.
Mm-hmm.
He was born back in 1907 in Punjab, which was
Mhm.
British India at the time, of course.
Right, it's part of Pakistan now.
Exactly. And he was just surrounded by this activism. His father, his uncle, they were both deeply involved in movements pushing for independence.
So this wasn't just like theoretical for them. It wasn't just talk.
Oh, no. No, this was them putting themselves out there, really taking risks.
So growing up, it was more than just, dinner table conversations about politics. This was real life.
Exactly. Imagine growing up in that environment, hearing their stories, seeing what they went through. It must have had a huge impact on how he saw the world.
Oh, absolutely.
And it wasn't just his family either. The schools he went to, DAV School and the National College in Lahore, these were places that were known for being kind of hotbeds of revolutionary thought.
Really?
Yeah, these were places where ideas were debated and challenged all the time.
So he was surrounded by this atmosphere of resistance, but also intellectual curiosity. Did he actually start, like, directly participating in the movement early on?
Oh yeah, he was already writing for, like, revolutionary newspapers when he was just a teenager.
Wow.
Yeah. He had to use pseudonyms to avoid getting caught, of course.
Smart.
It wasn't just some youthful, like, idealism either. He was really engaged,
Yeah.
contributing to the movement, developing it intellectually, strategically.
A revolutionary journalist in his teens.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's not your average after-school activity. It sounds like he had this fire in him from a young age. But was there a specific event, something that happened that really pushed him into the spotlight, into the center of the movement?
Oh, yeah. There was definitely a turning point, a moment that I think really solidified his commitment to the cause, and suddenly everyone knew his name. It's what's known as the Saunders case. And it all started in 1928 with the arrival of the Simon Commission.
Okay, the Simon Commission. Now, if I remember correctly, that didn't exactly get a warm welcome in India, right? Remind me why that was again.
Well, this commission was sent to basically report on the political situation in India and make recommendations for reform, that sort of thing.
Right, sounds reasonable enough on the surface.
Right, it sounds fine in theory,
Yeah.
but there was a huge problem. Not a single Indian person was on this commission.
Oh, wow.
It was just seen as another example of the British being arrogant, basically,
Yeah.
deciding India's future without actually including any Indians in the process.
It's like having a bunch of outsiders come in and tell you how to run your own home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you can imagine this sparked outrage, protests all across the country.
Of course.
And in Lahore, a prominent nationalist leader, Lala Lajpat Rai, he led a demonstration against this commission.
Okay.
And the police, they responded brutally. They did what's called a lathi charge.
A lathi charge. For those who might not know, what exactly does that mean?
It's basically this violent attack using batons. It's often indiscriminate, totally excessive.
Brutal.
Yeah. And Lala Lajpat Rai, he was badly injured, and he died not long after that.
Oh, wow.
This really became a rallying cry for the whole independence movement, and it had a profound impact on Bhagat Singh especially.
Yeah, it makes sense. This wasn't just some abstract political event for him. It was personal. Did this push him towards more, I don't know, more radical action?
Well, he joined the Hindustan Socialist Republican Association, or HSRA. This was a group that was committed to complete independence, and they were willing to use any means necessary to get there.
Okay, so they weren't messing around.
Nope. And they vowed to avenge Lala Lajpat Rai's death.
So their target was the police who'd carried out the Lathi charge.
Right. Their plan was to assassinate the police superintendent, the one they held responsible, James Scott.
Okay.
But things didn't exactly go according to plan.
Is this where Saunders comes into the picture?
Yes. In a case of mistaken identity, they ended up killing John Saunders instead. He was a junior officer.
A tragic mistake, obviously, with huge consequences. But even though they got the wrong target, did this act still manage to galvanize the movement?
It certainly made Bhagat Singh a household name.
Mm-hmm.
He became a wanted man,
Right.
a symbol of defiance.
Yeah.
He and the others, they had to go into hiding, obviously. They became fugitives. But they didn't just disappear, They were determined to use their notoriety for their cause.
They used it to their advantage.
Exactly. They were very clever about it, even using propaganda to manipulate how the public viewed the Saunders case. It really helped to solidify their image as revolutionaries who were willing to take action.
It sounds like he had a good understanding of how important public perception is. Was this like a turning point in his approach, a shift towards more strategic, maybe more symbolic actions?
I think this incident really did mark a shift in how he approached things. It showed that he was, realizing how powerful propaganda can be,
Mm,
and that he was willing to use really dramatic actions to get people's attention.
right.
He wasn't just a revolutionary anymore. He was becoming a strategist,
Mhm.
someone who really understood the power of a symbolic act.
And this leads us to what's probably his most audacious act, the bombing of the Central Legislative Assembly in Delhi in 1929.
Right. And, it was planned very carefully. It was about making a statement. He wasn't trying to hurt anyone. He picked a spot in the chamber where he knew nobody would be.
It's still such a dramatic escalation, and we've talked about how he was a skilled writer, how he understood the media. So was this bombing like a deliberate provocation? Was that the plan?
Oh, absolutely. He knew that a violent act, even one where nobody gets hurt,
Yeah.
it would still get people talking.
Yeah.
This wasn't just about making a statement. It was about forcing the British Raj to, acknowledge them.
Yeah,
Uh,
actually engage with them.
right. To engage with their demands out in the open.
So how did they use that attention that they got? It wasn't just about the bombing itself, was it?
Right. So after setting off the bombs, they showered leaflets down on the legislators below. They were shouting, "Inquilab Zindabad," which means "Long live the revolution."
Mm.
And then they just let themselves be arrested.
They courted arrest. That's a bold move. What was the thinking behind that?
Well, remember how he was writing for those revolutionary newspapers as a teenager? He got it.
Hmm.
He understood the power of the media. He knew that if they got arrested, their trial, it would become this platform to spread their message to a much bigger audience.
So they were using their trial as a stage for revolution.
Exactly. And this is where we really start to see him, evolving from just this revolutionary firebrand, into this leader with a deeper understanding of strategy and symbolism.
Mm-hmm.
His actions weren't just about defiance anymore. They were carefully planned out.
To meet very specific goals.
Exactly.
It feels like we're just scratching the surface here with Bhagat Singh's story. There's so much more to unpack, especially about his time in prison, how his ideas developed. But I think we'll have to save that for next segment. So we left off with Bhagat Singh and Bhatukeshwar Dutt. They surrendered after that assembly bombing very deliberately, and they turned their trial into this platform for their cause. But it's one thing to be a revolutionary out in the world, taking these big, daring actions. It's another thing entirely to be confined, within the walls of a prison. So how did Bhagat Singh manage to keep that revolutionary spirit alive while he was locked up?
Well, prison for him wasn't just like a period of being shut away.
Mm.
It became another way for him to fight,
Yeah.
another battleground for justice, for independence. And we see a whole new side of him emerge here, I think.
Mm.
A side that shows how deeply he was committed to social justice. And it wasn't just about, fighting for political freedom anymore.
What do you mean? How did his focus shift once he was in prison?
Well, he saw it firsthand. The difference in how Indian political prisoners were treated compared to European prisoners.
Right.
Indian prisoners were often subjected to much harsher conditions. They were denied basic rights.
Mm.
And they were treated like common criminals, not like people who were fighting for their country's freedom,
So the British Raj, they wanted to crush their spirits, make them feel less than human.
Exactly. But Bhagat Singh, he refused to be silenced.
Yeah.
He wouldn't let this injustice stand. He realized that even in prison, they still had a powerful weapon, their own bodies.
And that's when the hunger strikes began. It's such a powerful form of protest, isn't it? You're putting your own life on the line to make your point.
It was a strategic move, definitely. It was designed to shine a light on what political prisoners were going through and to, force the British authorities to listen to their demands.
And this wasn't just some small, localized protest.
Oh, no. This got attention all over the country. Even big names like Jawaharlal Nehru, they spoke out in support.
Wow. That must have put a lot of pressure on the British government. Did they give in to the demands?
Well, they made some concessions. They improved the conditions a bit, but they refused to budge on the main issue, which was recognizing political prisoners as a separate category.
Right.
The British, they saw it as a matter of principle, I guess.
Yeah.
They said that if you break the law, no matter what your reasons are, you're a criminal.
Mm-hmm.
But for Bhagat Singh, this was about the dignity of the people who were fighting for their nation.
It's interesting how these little distinctions, they become so important in a fight for justice. It wasn't really about better food or whatever. It was about having their cause acknowledged.
Absolutely. And that commitment to principle, it came at a very high price.
Yeah.
One of the hunger strikers, Jatin Das, he died after 63 days without food.
Oh.
It was a tragedy.
To die for what you believe in, even inside a prison, it really says something about how strongly they felt about this.
It was a turning point, I think. Jatin Das's death showed just how serious the situation was, how far these guys were willing to go. It put so much pressure on the British,
Yeah.
and it made Bhagat Singh even more of a symbol of resistance.
So you have Bhagat Singh. He's already a national figure because of, those daring actions he took. Now he's leading this high-profile hunger strike. And at the same time, he's waiting for his trial for the Saunders case. How did the British government handle all of that?
They were in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Bhagat Singh was becoming more and more popular. The hunger strike was a PR nightmare for them.
Right.
They had to do something, and they had to do it fast. They needed to stop the unrest, and they needed to neutralize Bhagat Singh because he was becoming a real threat to their power.
So they rushed the Saunders case through.
Yeah, they moved it up. The trial became known as the Lahore Conspiracy Case, and the viceroy at the time, Lord Irwin, he declared a state of emergency.
Mm-hmm.
And he introduced this ordinance basically to create a special tribunal just for this case.
A special tribunal. What was the point of that?
Well, this tribunal, it had 3 high court judges, and it was set up to basically bypass the usual court procedures.
I see.
They wanted a quick verdict, and they wanted to make it really hard to appeal. They were creating a system to get the result they wanted.
It sounds like they were rigging the game against him from the start.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mm.
The trial was full of irregularities, and the prosecution's case, it rested a lot on the testimony of people who used to be part of the movement but had become informants.
Oh, wow.
The defense tried to fight it, of course. They said that the tribunal was illegal, that it went against basic principles of a fair trial, but none of that worked.
So even his legal defense was sabotaged by this special tribunal.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about a fair trial or not. It was about using the legal system as a way to silence anyone who disagreed with them.
To make an example of him.
Yeah, to scare other people.
It's a reminder of how those in power can manipulate things to get rid of opposition.
And remember, this is all happening while he's still recovering from that hunger strike. He had to be carried into the courtroom on a stretcher sometimes.
Oh, wow.
It was a powerful image. It showed everyone what he'd been through for his beliefs.
So this brings us to the verdict. What happened? What was the outcome of this, rushed trial?
The tribunal found Bhagat Singh guilty. Him and his comrades, Sukhdev and Rajguru, guilty of the murder of John Saunders.
And the sentence?
Death by hanging.
Death. It's hard to imagine, getting that kind of verdict, knowing that your life is going to be cut short, especially when you're fighting for something so big, the freedom of your people.
And even with that hanging over his head, Bhagat Singh, he didn't break. He saw his execution as, as another opportunity.
Another opportunity.
Yeah, to make a statement.
Mm-hmm.
One that would inspire others to keep fighting against oppression, even after he was gone.
He almost transcended the fear of death, it seems.
He did.
Did he appeal the sentence?
There were appeals. A lot of people begged for clemency, Big names, like Madan Mohan Malaviya. Even Gandhi himself tried to intervene.
Wow.
But the British government, they wouldn't budge. They saw him as too much of a risk, too influential.
They couldn't silence his ideas, so they decided to silence him.
That's it. And we see that happen again and again throughout history, don't we?
Yeah, unfortunately.
The British, they really tried to control the narrative, even at the very end.
How so?
Well, they moved the execution date up, earlier than originally planned.
Okay.
And they hanged him along with Rajguru and Sukhdev, on March 23rd, 1931, at 7:30 in the evening.
At the Lahore jail.
Yeah. And he was just 23 years old.
They didn't even give them a final day, a chance to say goodbye or prepare themselves. It's like, even in death, the British wanted to dehumanize them.
Right, like they wanted to erase any impact they might have had.
Yeah.
And they went even further. They broke a hole in the back wall of the jail so they could take the bodies out secretly. They cremated them in the middle of the night and then scattered the ashes in the Sutlej River.
To prevent them from having a proper burial, a place where people could remember them.
Yeah. It was deliberate. They wanted to erase their memory. But, that kind of thing, it often has the opposite effect.
It creates martyrs.
Exactly. It makes them into these powerful symbols that inspire people for generations.
And that's exactly what happened with Bhagat Singh, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. His execution, it sparked outrage and protests all over India. He became this legend, almost larger than life. His words, his image, they became a rallying cry, not just for the independence movement, but even beyond that.
And we've been talking about his actions, his courage, his incredible commitment to his cause. But what about his vision for India? What were the ideas that made him such a threat to the British?
Well, Bhagat Singh, he wasn't just a revolutionary, out there fighting. He was a thinker, someone with a vision that went beyond just getting rid of the British.
Right, right.
Early on, he was influenced by figures like Kartar Singh Sarabha.
Okay.
Sarabha had been executed for his role in the Ghadar movement, which was all about complete independence achieved through armed revolution.
So he was inspired by people who believed in direct action, but his thinking evolved beyond that, right?
Yes, it did. He read everything he could get his hands on, studying all these different revolutionary thinkers, Bakunin, Marx, Lenin, Trotsky. And he came to believe that true freedom, it couldn't be achieved by just swapping out British rule for, another form of elite rule.
He didn't just want to replace one system of power with another.
Exactly. He envisioned a socialist India where everyone was equal, a place with no exploitation, where power and resources were shared fairly.
So it was about more than just political freedom. It was about social and economic justice, too.
Exactly. And then he became an atheist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He challenged the role of religion in society. He saw it as a way to divide people, to keep the powerful in power.
Mm-hmm.
He even wrote an essay about it while he was in prison called Why I Am an Atheist.
So a socialist, an atheist, and a revolutionary, that's a pretty radical combination for his time.
Definitely. And those ideas, they're still powerful today, especially for people who see this fight for social justice as tied to the fight against, colonialism and imperialism. His writing, his speeches, they talked about things like education, women's rights, even environmental sustainability, stuff that's still relevant today.
It's amazing how his words still resonate, It's like they were written for today.
He understood that real revolution, it takes more than just changing the outside world. You have to change how people think, too. With his ideas, just as much as he was fighting with actions.
Yeah. This deep dive has really shown us that Bhagat Singh was so much more than just a martyr. He was a complex person, a man of action, a thinker, a visionary. And his ideas, they still challenge us. They still inspire us.
His life, his legacy, it asks us to think about what we're willing to fight for. What are the injustices we see around us? And what can we do to change them? What does it mean to be a revolutionary in our own time?
Bhagat Singh's story reminds us that even when things seem impossible, one person really can make a difference. His courage, his conviction, his belief in a better future, it all still resonates with us almost 100 years later. And that's something worth thinking about as we wrap up this deep dive.